You don't.
Can I just pretend? You said yeah, like I'm gonna hand it to you to make it.
Actually,
It's there, but I feel like I'm pretty loud. Again, my name's Neva. We're gonna just call the meeting to order since it's 6 o'clock. I'll do my best to always try to keep you on time, as best as possible. So, for roll call, do we need to do that?
I'll do roll call for you.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, Neva.
Yes, ma'am.
Alexander.
Here.
Cassandra. Here. Conley.
Here.
Debbie.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
All right, all here.
Perfect, thank you, Ms. Secretary. Okay, so you should have the agenda in front of you for tonight. We need to make sure we have approval for that. That should be, we need to
Just a motion to approve the agenda.
make sure, and that should come from someone else.
Yes.
So is there anybody who wants to put a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
You're going to remind me names.
Cassie.
That's Cass.
Cassie?
And then is there a second?
I second that. Alexander?
Thank you. All right. We've got old business on here, but there's nothing really listed.
No.
So we're gonna just cruise on past that into new business. We've got the history of the park board, so we have a visitor that's with us to kind of give us a little bit of information. I'll ask you to maybe if you want to stand up, introduce yourself in case anyone hasn't met you yet, and then I'll give you the floor after that.
Okay,
Thank you.
my name's Jack McCormick. I've known a couple of people here for a while, so I'm glad to get to know all of you. So,
And Jack is a former member of the park board. He was on the park board prior to it kind of disbanding. So I thought it would be good to bring him in so he could give you kind of some history and overview of maybe some of the projects they were working on. So maybe you can pick up with some of those, or, just have a little bit of history and insight as to what they were working on and where they left off.
you want me to
You can
stand over
You
there?
can stand over
wherever
there,
you
you
want.
can stay sitting down if you want, whatever's most comfortable for you. And you're gonna just tell us a little bit about your time on the park board and your projects y'all did?
Okay, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, well, I'll just stay right here. A little bit about myself. I live in Sunnydale, which is scenic Sunnydale. And today it was indeed sunny, so I'm happy to come in here on a sunny day from Sunnydale. I was a professor of chemistry for 40 years, and I tell you, I never gave a lecture that was much less than an hour in length, so I hope you guys are comfortable.
Ready for it.
I'll try to break my record tonight. Okay, about 2010, the then mayor of Kechi, Bob Jackson, asked me to start up the park board again. There had been a park board, but it was inactive, I guess. I didn't know anything about it, and I did take over as chair of the park board in 10. And I didn't have any information handed to me like you guys are gonna get tonight. So we had a pretty clean slate to start with. I got a group of people to be on the board, and it was a very good group. For the most part, there'll be one exception I'll tell you about. Kathy Bonison, some of you I know you live next door to her. Kathy and her husband ultimately was on the board too. They were really instrumental in getting things going, tremendous people. And there were others that you may or may not do, but the composition of the park board kind of changed over time. And so those were the ones that I would call attention to in particular. So we got the park. It was dirty. There were a lot of dead trees that needed attention. There was no shade to speak of. There was sidewalks, but there were no walking paths really, still aren't. And that's pretty much the way we got it. It was a clean slate for us. So we took it on, and that bunch that we had was really a pretty much dig in the dirt bunch of people. Didn't mind getting over there and pulling weeds, trimming trees, and doing whatever was necessary. So we wanted to make the park a more enjoyable place. We wanted to really try to make it a jewel for this area if we could. We developed some bylaws that I think Matt's going to make available to you. And we established, or I did as chair anyway, a really good relationship with the person, Larry Kellenberger, who was then the head of the maintenance people in Kechi. Larry and I worked really well together, and it was important to realize as park board people that we were just an advisory group. We really didn't have any authority to go out and do anything without, getting approval for it. Well, this is one of the anecdotes I'll mention to you. This person that I'm going to be talking about no longer lives in Kechi, and I'm not going to mention his name anyhow. But there was one man on our park board who did not seem to grasp the idea that we were simply an advisory group. And among other things, one of the things that he did on his own was the following. He worked for a paving company, so he had access to concrete. So he decided that he wanted to, I don't know why, maybe enlarge the parking lot over there where the porta potty is usually located. So he came in and without talking to anybody about it, poured a bunch of concrete over there and made a new pad. Well, Larry Kellenberger, the man I just mentioned who headed the physical group here in Kechi, was not real happy about that. And suffice it to say that fellow, whose name I'm having trouble not saying, that fellow got a lot of exercise breaking up all that concrete with a sledgehammer and hauling it off. So, he didn't get the word. Most everybody does. You're an advisor group, and that's what you need to do. But I hope you don't have anybody like him that wants to work in the park breaking up concrete. Well, anyway, when I say that I or we did something in the park, understand that this often, if it involved heavy work, we had to involve the city guys. They're the ones that could dig the holes and whatnot. So, most of the trees that you see in the park nowadays, we put in. And so we still need some more shade probably, but we did put in a lot of trees, and it's a variety of trees. And I think someplace I've got an inventory of the trees in case you ever want to find out anything about that. Along those lines, I'll make mention of the fact that I established a real good relationship with the K-State Extension people. They're real good resources for park kinds of things. And so I would encourage you somehow to get to know the Extension people, K-State. And along those lines also is the Fish and Game people. They're very helpful, and of course they stock the pond, and they have good information that you might find. The state of the park, I said, was not very good. How did it come into being in the first place? I've tried to track this down, but there was a guy named Dale Wilson who developed a lot, if not all, of that property along Prairie Creek, like where Debbie lives. And Debbie asked her earlier how old her house is. Well, I wanted to know kind of when Dale Wilson was doing that. I haven't been able to find out, but apparently it was in the late nineties when he did all of that work. And he, I guess, must have owned that property too, where the current pond is, but at that time it was just a sedimentation pond. And then, and I don't know how this happened, either the city bought that property
My
from,
understanding is he donated it to the city.
or donated it, yeah, to the city, and then the city turned it into a park. So anyway, we got the park, in that way. Some of the things that my park board did, was we added a new number of tables, picnic tables. There were a couple there. The two pavilions were still in place when we got there, but beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot. We got the barbecue grills installed, which was much appreciated by a lot of people. I said the park was dirty. Well, we put in the dog poop bags so people could pick up after their dogs, and then I think that contributed to cleaning up the park. Let's see. The other thing that I would mention is right now that we did that was, I think, very successful and paid off in many ways, was about twice a year we organized what I call work days. 9 to 12 on Saturday, we would try to get citizens to come in and help in the park. Help do what? Pull weeds. The city guys aren't gonna sit over there and pull weeds, they're just not gonna do it. Or if we had a bunch of annuals or perennials to plant, that's what we did. They aren't gonna do that. So it was that kind of stuff that we got the citizens to do whenever we had a work day twice a year. And the participation was pretty good. It got better when I started providing coffee and donuts. but it was pretty good, and I think people enjoyed it. They got to know each other better, and so on and so forth. I'll mention that Xeriscape plan over on the east side. That we got money to do that, and I don't remember exactly how, but it came from either city or state to put in a little demonstration guard of Xeriscape plants.
Is that the one behind the Monison's house?
Yeah. And for a while, there were a couple people, Kathy being a major contributor, and Tina Seemeyer, who lives in Northwoods, was on the park board, took good care of it. Then in 2018, I quit the park board along with Tina and a couple of others, and since that time, Kathy has tried a little bit to keep that cleaned up, but it's fallen into bad disrepair, which is unfortunate. It really needs to be cleaned up. All the weeds need to be pulled out. I think the plants that we put in are still probably going to be okay. And I've got a map of what we planted, so that might be useful to you sometime. Couple other things I'll mention. Am I getting close to an hour?
You're about 10 minutes.
A couple other things I'll mention. If you have walked around the park, you've seen a couple of memorials. There's one over there where there's a non-functional drinking fountain close to the kiddie park, kiddie playground. And then there's the other one over by the small, pavilion, that's an honorary thing for, Gene, who used to, who's dead now, but his wife's now running Gino's, the barbecue place. Gene Washington, that was his name. And he was a long-term resident of Kechi and well-respected and very nice guy, so we got that created in his memory. We created a set of guidelines that were approved by the city council. I'm sure Matt could find a copy someplace, that dealt with memorials, because we thought there might be more people wanting to put a memorial in the park sometime. And so there needed to be some guidelines about how to go about that. So that's available if the issue ever comes up. We got involved with the Arbor Foundation, and we usually held a little celebration on Arbor Day. And it's through that activity, in a way, we got Kechi named as a tree city, and you see the signs on the outskirts now. I don't think there's much more to be said about that. Okay, that's a lot of the stuff that we did. I'm sure I've left a few things out, but that's what we did. Now, I want to turn to what we didn't get done. There are a lot of things we talked about doing that for one reason or another, we just couldn't get it done. One of the things that we thought about a lot was that area down where the burn pile is now. You know what I mean? Just,
At the end of Anderson.
The old lagoon,
huh?
the old lagoon.
You know where the Kechi
Yeah.
burn pile is?
That used to be a lagoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's an open area that Kechi owns, but what do you do with it? Right now, it's kind of wasted space.
It's just a big.
You know where it is?
They do like the kite festival out there and where the cleanup, the big cleanup area is, usually they put the big dumpsters out there.
Are there problems with that area?
Well, anyway, I wanted to put baseball fields down there, and lo and behold, found out we couldn't do that because a lot of old concrete debris apparently has been dumped in that area over the years. And I was told that in places there's rebar sticking up out of the ground. Well, you can't have kids playing baseball where there's rebar sticking up out of the ground. So that idea got put away. Talked a little bit about putting an arboretum down there at one point. Talked about putting a walking trail down there. Well, that would work okay, except the problem with a lot of that stuff is that area is so isolated that we thought particularly single females would not really want to go down there and walk around late in the evening where it's so isolated. I don't know, maybe some of you ladies are karate experts or something, but it was an issue for us. We thought about, not down there necessarily, but across Prairie Creek, there's a space that is unused to the Prairie Creek, going the other direction. And we thought about a disc golf course. Well, we checked on disc golf, and that's not enough space for a disc golf course, and didn't think any more about that. There was a lot of interest in putting in a basketball court, which would have been an interest to me, and we just never could find a space for it. I still think that's a good idea, but where to put it? I have one idea, and I've mentioned this to Matt. Just behind the convenience store, there's a space that would be big enough for a half court, I think. And even if we just had a half court, it would be very, very good, I think, for the young kids to go over and have a place to shoot goals and things like that. It might also be available to pickleball, maybe some of those kinds of things.
Now, is that property owned by the city with the park, or is that just, I didn't think so.
It's separate, it's a separate parcel.
No, that was originally owned by Bill Wilson. It's my understanding, and Matt and I've talked about it, and Matt, I found out some more. That little piece of ground is now owned either by Dale Wilson's daughter or one of his, or maybe his sister. I'm not sure who it is. But that ground's not useful for anything else. You can't put a building in there and whatnot. So maybe
Find out
somebody
if they're
would be willing
donate it.
to donate that, and, or maybe the city could buy it and put something in there. That was another idea we had. Oh, and coming back to that burn pile area, we had talked about putting a building of some sort down there. Well, see, all of that used to be a sludge pond. It was, just that. And that ground apparently is like Jello. And so if you're going to put much of a building at all, we were told that it would have to have supports that go all the way down to bedrock. So that idea got squashed as well. So everything that we thought about for that area didn't go through. So this is something for you guys to do. I'll mention one more and then I'll shut up. There was talk about a splash pad. And I spend a lot of time looking into splash pads. And it's a lot easier to look into it than it is to do it. I was not for or against splash pads, but now I really question it for Kechi. Expensive, and just one figure that I came up with, this was in 2017, I looked at what the cost would be for the water, city water, to run us just a small splash pad for one season. It's $20,000. So they're expensive. Well, you use the well. You can't. That water's not treated. You have to have treated water. And it's just a whole symphony of stuff like that comes up that you have to deal with. So anyway, I came away from that just thinking it's not a very good fit for Kechi, that's all. Okay, that's all I've got to regale you with. So,
Does anybody have any questions for John? Specifically you want to redirect back to, or ask anything about his time, or things that maybe you just were wondering about with him?
I'm curious about the dock, the fishing dock, and so who was that set in place at the same time the equipment was?
I don't know, the
The
fishing
wood
dock
rot tells
probably
me
was
yes.
put in when the two pavilions were put in, I don't know.
Okay, cause I know that could really use, I know that a ton of things could be upgraded,
Yeah,
and treated,
sure,
but
yeah.
the dock specifically, it's,
Yeah, and the
Pretty
bridge
rough.
needs to be
Yeah.
worked on, so there are things like that the city needs to do. All you guys can do is put pressure on to get it done.
do you remember last time the water fountains were running?
Oh, that water fountain has been a pain ever since it was installed.
Yeah,
There's I don't know the details, but apparently there's a valve in there that is flaky and it doesn't last long, and I guess it's a headache. So as far as I can tell, the maintenance people just given up on it, which is too bad. And
Yeah,
just a
I
little
think-
history on that
Yeah, that-
memorial too.
That part is in for repair, from what I understand, for the fountain, but it does give them a lot of fits down there.
Does it?
That's-
I don't-
Sometimes.
Does it? I've never had it.
Yeah, it does.
You have it tried a few times and it's never worked for me.
Oh, no, we're talking the fountain.
In the
pond. The pond
Oh, in the
fountain.
pond?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the water.
Oh,
fountain.
Oh,
I
yeah.
found that.
No, I thought you were talking about that drinking fountain.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not that I'm feeling like I need to drink from it, but I was just
Well, it was
curious.
nice too, because it had a dog pond, a
Yeah,
dog
with
pound
Yes,
there.
yeah.
It's because little kids put rocks in it.
So,
Yeah.
and I wanna
Keep
make
drinking it.
a comment I forgot to a minute ago about the memorial that's over there. That's a memorial to Dr. Whitesides. He was jogging down 61st Street years ago and got hit by a car. And his wife then came to us and wanted us to put the memorial in for him, so that's the origin of it. And by the way, you know, I'm available if you people wanna ask me questions in the future. I'm not really gonna go over and dig any holes in the park for you.
Will you break up some concrete though? Yeah, with a concrete sledgehammer.
But I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can, so just feel free to call me.
Anybody else have one they wanna ask now, or?
Okey dokey.
Thank you so much, Mr. McCormick, I really appreciate
Sure.
you.
Thank you, Jack. That's perfect.
Alright.
Well,
So the next order of business is just kind of covering our priorities. Under that, you're gonna kind of see some subheadings for playground equipment, the fitness court, talking about the berm. So for playground equipment, you can kind of see in your packet, Matt had included in there, a quote from the company, that actually came to the park, right, saw the space, looked at it, so they kind of understood a little bit more about it, as opposed to just kind of getting some mappage and things like that. Then they made some suggestions, and you can kind of see some different styles, and things like that. And then towards the end, you'll also kind of see a little bit more about the financial side of it as well. There's tons of different options.
I noticed this is all by the same company. Is
Yes,
this the only
this one.
company that has been?
I don't believe it's the only company we've gotten a quote from.
Yeah, so we reached out to several companies. One of the quotes in here was from AFCO.
Yeah, so there's a
Which
second
was
one
a-
that's just like the blue that looks like this. That's a different quote from this one.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, AFCO did not come down and look at it. They just kind of sent us some stuff and weren't very involved, so we moved away from them pretty quickly. They just didn't act like they cared too much about it. There were several other companies that Thomas, our public works director, reached out to. Of course, they didn't provide any type of quotes or anything, but this Crouch Recreation out of Elkhorn or Omaha, Nebraska, was very, very responsive. They do playgrounds all across the United States, and they came down several times, looked at the playground, took measurements, provided estimates. Bob Wiederstein and Emily Hefner, who Emily used to be on the fair board, they both worked with the city on developing some of these concepts for the playground equipment, looked through the different brochures they had. We sent, these are just several revisions we had sent back and forth just to kind of get a price estimate on things. One of the main things with the park equipment down there, number one, it's old and it's worn out. It's still functional, it's still safe, it's just worn out. It really needs replaced. And number two is the fall surface. So right now there's gravel down there. Well, that gravel causes all types of problems. Kids get in there and throw it. They get it all over the sidewalks. They put it in the drinking fountains. They throw it in the pond. It's just a mess. So,
There's
So is-
also a drainage problem in the park.
what's that?
There's also a
They
drainage
retain a lot
problem.
of water.
Yeah, I don't know about the drainage problem. But as far as the playground equipment, the best time to replace the surface is when you replace the equipment. So it's kind of you get them both at the same time. It really wouldn't be affordable to replace the equipment and then come in and dig out all the rock and put the new surface down there. So this quote, I don't remember if this had.
It's the one with the CR on the top right hand
Yeah.
side, so you're not
Yeah.
seeing the CR code that goes with
It-
that.
Yeah, it has, so there was another company that they work with, Forever Lawn, and they do business down here in Wichita. So part of that cost of the equipment was roughly $170,000 for the fall surface that goes down there, and that's the rubberized type surface that goes down there. So it's all ADA compliant. That's the other thing, is with those rocks, kids can't get in there if they're, it's not handicap accessible. So if they're in a wheelchair, they can't get in there. It's very hard to walk on. So this provides an ADA accessible surface to that playground equipment as well. Jack, did you have something to add?
Well, I forgot to mention, that's something that my park board looked at quite a bit. And there just seemed to be no good solution to the surface there.
Mhm.
And I talked with the people in Bel Air, and they have a park where the surface is some kind of rubber.
Mhm.
I don't know what it is, but the problem they've had is that young boys with pocket knives get in there and carve on it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's also some companies, I didn't look in extensively, which stinks about AFCO because they're one of the ones that has higher standards for like the toxicity of the rubber, because that can actually be very toxic sometimes, especially for kids, because they absorb things at a much higher rate than adults. And especially when it's hot outside, it releases, and when it's brand new, so that might be something to look into as well.
Yeah, it's my understanding through our public works director that we cannot use rubber chips because of the pond for stormwater purposes, because they could get into the pond.
Hopefully the water will happen a lot.
You
faster.
can't get a wheelchair in using rubber chips.
No.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
I wouldn't think so,
Yeah, I don't see
So-
anything, you're right, exactly, I don't see anything here that talks about what their percentages are with any of the absorption rates or anything like that, so I think that we would have to do our own research on all of the absorption rates, and decide which company we would be going with.
And I think
because of that.
a nice thing for that would be that there's lots of new parks that are being built right now. Like Andover just did a really big thing. We have 2 or 3 other Wichita ones. So
Mhm.
us being able to reach
Central
out
County.
to other departments, say, hey, what have you learned? What do you see? What's been your experience, even with durability, things like that? Because you kind of remember, I don't know if you remember the Andover Park having to shut down and have to redo a bunch of it because they
Right.
had the tall climbing tower that they had to go back in and put netting back in because kids were falling off of it. And it's one of those things that, and with where I'm working at Exploration Place, right, we are right now going through a lot of information about our play area and what that looks like. And I mean, there's things you have to think about as far as like, bolt height and all kinds of things you wouldn't think about. They told us the #1 danger for kids on a playground is actually strangulation. Which is something we asked everybody, like, oh, falling, head injuries. Like, nope, actually going down a slide and getting your hoodie caught. Because the bolt's sticking out too far. So there's the thing with that, again, because I hear your concern about making sure that we're paying attention to the type of materials we're using and all of that, and the durability of all that, is I think as much as we can reach out and ask other people for their wisdom, kind of like we do with Jack, it's gonna save us some time, and effort, as much as possible. I think that this was a really rough, just from Matt and I's conversation, I think it's a really rough, quick quote that they did with the different pieces that they put up, so.
Yeah, and we just needed a starting point, but I guess the purpose of including these 2 bids in there is to just illustrate that this is not gonna be a cheap project.
Right.
It's playground equipment, just because of what
Oh,
it
yeah.
is very expensive,
It is.
And I think that's the hard thing for people to see sometime. They're like, well, why can't we just go down to Sam's and buy a playset and throw it in? Well, it's not that easy. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. So, but it was more, this Crouch Recreational, they belong to, I think it's this Omni Partner program where they go out and they get bids on all this different equipment. So we as a city, we don't have to put it out to various different vendors you know, to bid the price, it's all encompassing, when they do these, so that's a big advantage too, when those companies.
Now,
are
is this
parts of those
just the
partnership programs.
equipment, or is it anything that needs to be done to the ground to make the equipment work? Or is
This one
just-
was, let's see. It's been so long since I looked at it.
It still includes the installation.
Installation.
Yeah, it looks like it's installation, yeah. Now, with that, our public works would do some of the work, because they have to relocate any sprinkler lines or utilities that go under there, so, you know, they can dig some of that rock out as well, but.
Right. It says at the end of that CR quote that the site prep, we would be responsible for the site prep, including removal of existing clay equipment and gravel and rocks.
Yeah, and I think that's what Thomas, our public works director, had talked to him about, is they would just pull all of that out to save the city some money.
So, just talking to my husband, who kind of helped pick out some of the possibilities, he said one of the things he and, what was her name?
Emily?
Emily looked at was like trying to find equipment that would be a broad age range.
Yes.
So some for the younger kids and some for the older kids, so.
I think I'm really popular with newer parks is to have like the smaller equipment on one side and then having the bigger stuff as well, which is nice.
Cause it is difficult for ours, you know, when you have mixed age of kiddos to not get run over, or, you know, things like that too, so it just makes it hard for everybody to cohabitate, the space
So-
effectively.
So is this equipment based on the current footprint,
Yes.
not expanding it, just maintaining what we
Correct.
currently have?
Correct,
One
yeah.
of the city master plans have us expanding it as well.
That I don't know.
Which one it was?
She was asking if one of the
But
master, new
they're-
master plans, how that's extending the play area part of the
I
park.
know I've seen a plan that included the splash pad that's been talked about, but I
Yeah,
thought they would look
Like
at
Jack said, I
extending
know
it
they talked
north
about a
as
splash
well.
pad, and I think things have changed
Yeah.
since then, because other cities have gotten splash pads too, and, I mean, for Kechi, water would be the huge issue there,
Yeah.
because we don't have our own water supply. You know, some cities have their own water supply, so it really doesn't cost them anything. but
Kinda
when
in
you're
a drought.
Purchasing the water, yeah. So we're
You can only use it for Tuesdays between, you know, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Before 10 a.m. and after 8 p.m.
Well, I think, and the other thing to think about right now, especially just with where we are when it comes to, additional cost for this, is to understand this was prior to any kind of tariff issues that we're having right now.
That's right.
So please note that, I mean, it's a $400,000 estimate, and that's prior to what we're having, you know, right now. And I say that because again, like, you know, we're kind of having the same thing with bringing in goods and things. And so, as we're trying to get quotes and things like that too, we'll have to understand that that's gonna be a ever-moving target, I think, for the near future.
Yeah,
especially.
and that's a good point. Nothing ever gets cheaper.
Right.
So the longer you put something off, the more expensive it's gonna be. Yeah. But the park is one of the number one priorities from the community that we have heard, specifically the playground equipment.
Speaking of that, we might want to, and I understand that we're going through and we need to look at, you know, the equipment because it's falling apart. But we also need to go back to our roots, and we need to go back to the surveys that we've done numerous times, and we need to go back to what the people in the community want, right? Which is sidewalks, and we need to go back to what people want on the surveys, so.
And I think there's sidewalks there that definitely around the park need to be repaired.
Right.
There are some treacherous places where it's really uneven. I was taking my grandson for a stroller ride, and I'm like going this way for that bump and this way for that bump.
Don't ever go for a walk in Collegeville.
Yeah, very true.
That's why we live
But
in
you know, and
Utah.
there's low spots where when it rains hard, you can't even walk around the pond because it's underwater. So
So-
we have a lot of maintaining to do before we do a lot of new stuff, I think.
Right, so before we even start deciding on what we are going to do, let's look at what Kechi wants us to do.
So you're talking about those surveys, how recently were those done? Do you remember?
I don't know.
So we're talking about the ones that we just sent back in last year with the postcards and stuff?
Yeah, it's like, you know, we spent like, I don't know how many thousands of dollars on those things that we've done.
Are those on the city website?
Yeah, we have the Parks Master Plan.
I wanna
It-
say it was 22.
It was 2022.
Yeah, I think it was updated in 22, yeah.
Yeah.
The master plan was just updated,
21.
but the
And
parks.
is
that in our-
should have been
The results, is that in our
21 or
packet?
22.
No, it's not.
I don't think it's not, that's what I was just asking, so, I'll put that in my notes so we can get that.
Yeah, we'll send
I can
it.
include that in the next one, but if you want on your own, you can go look at it prior to, so you don't have to wait for the next month.
Yeah, it's on the city website, and I would send you a link to that, cause it is a big document. They probably wouldn't send over email.
Because that's part of our requirement, right? As an advisory board, right, we're here to take the information that we're given just as a community and be able to supply that, within our recommendations and our decisions here as far as what we want to present. And so we're that part of the voice, and I think that's a huge deal for us. And one of the reasons why they wanted the park board to come back. And so I think if we fulfill that commitment, that's probably like you were saying, that's one of our top priorities, for that. So I would encourage you to, that if you are out and about, when you see something, take a picture of it. Like, so, because for us, you know, when I'm there with my kiddos, I'm not really thinking about it, you know, in that moment, but now, it's the last few times we've been there, I'm like, oh, looking at this, now I'm looking at this. And it may just be something that you get blindness to it, right? I've dealt with it for so long, I'm not
Right.
thinking about it anymore.
Absolutely.
So if you keep track of that, and then you get that with us, and we can keep it kind of in a running scale to be able to say, okay, here are some things that we're seeing, so that we can make appropriate plans to take care of those within the steps that we have, to do that at the same time, as well. Was there anything else on the current playground equipment stuff we've got, just within this part of this discussion, that anybody wanted to cover or touch or ask a question about?
So we or somebody is going to reach out to some of the places that have recently acquired in parks to find out who they used or what they're doing or what.
I think that's something, so when I've been on, and I've visited like the community advisory board, what they have done, which has been really great, is they have sometimes made their meetings mobile, and they've gone to other people's meetings to ask questions and be able to ask them, or have invited them in to give a presentation on what they've done, which has allowed them to have a specific time with each individual person, and that may be what I would recommend. Because while going out, having one person asking this question doesn't allow for follow-up and things like that. Is there anyone who would feel comfortable looking and maybe researching some of that to see like the people that we might want to contact that? For that group of people to see who might want to come, so whether it's a representative from the parks community in Wichita or Bel Air or Andover or Augusta has a really beautiful couple of parks that they had just redone, or things like that. Is there anyone that's kind of like a thing you'd like to do? Or not like to do? It's okay too.
Is anyone familiar with the Parking Valley Center from the Laughlin?
The one where the dog park is? I don't know the names of them.
No, not where the dog park is. It's near the ball fields.
It's where the
And-
pond is
yeah.
and the slush fund.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
they
they
do
know
have
that.
that. I've heard of that. That's a really nice one. But maybe we don't wanna be just the exact same park that everyone else has.
Absolutely.
Too.
And I think our goal for that is more to just glean the understanding from them, from what, you
Pick
know,
their
what did they
brain.
run into, what are some things that
Avoid the
they,
problems that they've already dealt with.
exactly, so, and that's kind of one of our best learning tools, I think, for us, just all of us being new to this kind of thing, is kind of understanding that. So that would just kind of be, if anybody has, I'll ask one more time at least, if anybody would like, that's something they would like to do, is try to reach out to those people and see if you can kind of coordinate that, or is that, because if not, I can do it, I
Just to
wanna
learn
say-
about who installed the park and
Really what I'm thinking is just someone to reach out to those people to see if they would like to come, kind of like what Jack did tonight, and kind of talk us through what they've done, and then allow us to ask questions or things like that. So almost just to come in and allow us to have kind of a question answer session with them. And we could do, I just have kind of one night, we have 2 or 3 of them come in, so they don't feel like we're grilling them, as well. But it would be someone who would coordinate that effort, if that makes sense.
Well, I can reach out to them.
Okay.
What areas do you want me to reach out to?
I think anyone that you can, and what comes to my mind, obviously, is like the Parks and Rec Center and groups that are taking care of that, or maybe the recreation centers, whoever in that specific area would be in charge of that part of their park. So I don't know whether they have park boards specifically within their community, whether they just have regular employees that are in charge of that.
But you're talking like Bel Air, Wichita.
Yeah, any of the surrounding areas, 'cause they're gonna be the ones who probably have the most, reliable information for our spacing. Thinking about weather and all the impact of that, as well. And that may be something that, I don't know, Matt, whether you would have maybe some resources that
I
you
could
could
help,
contact.
yeah, I could
Yeah.
reach out to,
Help find that,
the
so that
other-
you're not just
yeah.
constantly having to like call 50 times
yeah,
to get
and
one
Debbie,
name.
I'll kind of reach out to their city administrators and get some contact information from them.
Okay, so I'll wait to hear from you
Mhm.
about.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we can kind of coordinate together on when to put that on the agenda, and if we can do it like on one night or a couple of times, so that we don't have to space it out too far for them, or whatever works best to kind of be respectful of their time and effort. Does everybody feel okay about that? Anything else on playground equipment? Alright, we're gonna move on to the fitness court. So this isn't, and I just wanna be, I know that this is something, and I will tell you, I know that this is something that is not set for us, and so Matt and I kinda talked about this a lot, about what the grant was, what it looks like, all of that. Really, the only thing that we're looking at discussing about this, at least for tonight, is just so that you can familiarize yourself with what it is and what the proposal was and things like that. It's not, we're not making a recommendation to do it or not do it or any of that tonight, we just wanna make sure everybody knows what the information is. You can ask questions, you can ask Matt about any of that kind of stuff too, so that you feel really, in the know about what that was for, what they wanna do, where they wanna do it, all that kind of stuff. So I don't want you to feel pressured to like, we have to decide something about this, we're gonna do all of that today. That's not what it's for on here, it's just to really give us the knowledge around that, as far as that goes. Does that make sense? Perfect, okay.
Yeah,
That should
and
also be in your
and
packet.
maybe a little bit of direction
Yes.
for the city,
yes.
because there's timelines that have to be met for this grant. They're kind of on hold until we figure out exactly what we wanna do. Just to give you a little history, the city was awarded a $50,000 grant for one of these fitness courts. The initial idea is that it would go somewhere up in the city park, possibly could go on like this campus here. I don't know if that would be real conducive, because the point of this is to put a fitness, some type of fitness activity in a city park. They identified it by using software that they have that tracks people's fitness patterns in different towns, so they can see where people are exercising and walking and all that other stuff. It's pretty cool. So that's why they identified somewhere up around the city park. The information in your packet just kind of gives an overview of the campaign that they have. It's through Blue Cross Blue Shield. Essentially what it is a self-contained workout center. And if you have any questions, I can answer
But we
for you.
don't- we don't know what it's gonna look like.
Well, there's pictures of it here, what it will look like.
Well, and I know the community has already spoken that the majority of the people that have come to the meetings regarding this have said no, thank you.
Mhm.
So, I'm not
I guess, because I've been confused on exactly, so I've been to these meetings and I still don't know what it looks like. I don't know,
Well, there's a couple different renderings.
Yeah,
Right,
there's renderings
so
on
I
here,
don't
of exactly what it
know.
looks like.
Neither of them are very cute.
Well, and the thing about it is this is intended, and if you're gonna put it in the park, this is intended for 14-year-olds and up. Who's gonna keep the little kids off of it?
They could just make a basketball court and then work out on it if they, because that's exactly what that looks,
Looks like, yeah.
the same size.
so I don't know whether, I mean, it might be kind of fun, but I don't know what,
There's one over, isn't it kind of off of 25th Street and
Mhm.
Broadway?
Yeah,
I was
there's,
just driving with my daughter and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
does it have all of this stuff on it on this
it
side?
has some of it, I
yeah,
wouldn't say.
there's one in Wichita, and then Park City, since they heard about Kechi possibly getting one, Park City is getting one too. They were like, oh, we want our name on the list, so they are getting one over there as well.
They can have
so.
it.
Yeah, yeah, they could have it. Is it one of those things where we can't get the $50,000 for something else? It's
We
only for
can't-
this?
No, just,
Yeah.
it's only for
And the
that.
$50,000 is not the full cost of it, correct?
No,
Oh,
right, right.
Oh,
The other would be through donations or in-kind work through the city, if our city employees did, site preparation and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
And it would be.
We have like 10 perfect weather days a year to like want to work out outside.
Well, I guess the question is too, and maybe Jack, you might know this, so when the fitness stuff that's out there now, just a small amount of stuff that was there, do you remember what led to that being installed, or what was the thought process for that?
Was that pre-existing?
Those little fitness stands?
Yeah,
The wood.
We did that, I forgot to mention it, Doug Bonison,
mhm,
he's a physical therapist and he kinda led that activity. We got that stuff put in, I haven't seen it get much use.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause they get splinters in the back.
It's
Sorry.
deteriorating. The concrete blocks around it are
It's just like,
cracking.
it's like the playground equipment.
It needs to be removed,
Yeah, it's just,
In my opinion,
yeah,
I'm just the secretary.
yeah, it's like anything else, there's a certain amount of service life in it.
Its life is expiring.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is, yeah.
It's past expiration.
Does this have to be in the park area, or is that something that we can look at a different space?
You can look at a different space.
Cause I think one of the, and you got, cause I will be honest, I'm not a big Facebooker. I think that some of the concerns that I had read when this was kind of presented, and heard even the other was just the removal of that amount of space out of the park. And now that like our police department is doing more in that area, and we're, you know, the Kechi Fair and Easter egg hunt, and the fact that that other great grass area that's next to the greenhouse is not gonna be a green grass area anymore, right? And other things that
Because
we're.
it's being developed.
So, yeah, being developed, right.
The other side of the.
No, the other side, apologies, yes,
of the
yes, yes.
flower, yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay, my brain went greenhouse, but we don't have a greenhouse in the park.
Right, so we don't, I think my concern is just the removal of green space, right? And the ability of, our residents to be able to be in that, where it's not prescribed play. It's not a certain thing you
Right.
have to do there. It's open to interpretation from whatever the community members want it to be. For me, I never want us to not use a resource that's being given. So I don't know whether that's something maybe we wanna look and see if there's an alternative space for it, that's not the Crater Park area. That maybe, like he had mentioned, whatever the space was across from Prairie Creek, that parcel of land that's behind the, gas station. Do we mind if we have to work out on top of rebar? I don't know. Maybe that's an extra thing, that's part of the workout, you gotta go down and pull the rebar up first.
Hey, these people are standing on stuff that looks like concrete.
Exactly, it's kind of the same thing. But whether that would be, there's not as much weight for a concrete pad as there would be for a building and things like that. So, I don't know that for me, is an automatic no, if that's something that we could look at an alternative space to be able to utilize that grant.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know
you're
how we-
utilizing the grant, but yet you still have a lot of additional money.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think there's other things that we need to use our resources for, other than this.
It was 60, how much more over the 50,000, do you remember?
The city would have to come up with about 110,000.
Oh, more?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that could be through donation, corporate sponsorships or donations or in-kind work.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Debbie though. If we're knocking down doors to get money, I would rather it be to be fixing things in the existing park, replacing the playground equipment that apparently is gonna cost $500,000.
Plus, if nobody ends up using it, even if we got it at a super discount rate, it's still wasteful.
You know that kids will use the other stuff.
Yeah.
That 100 and whatever thousand.
110.
Yeah, kids will use the other. That could go on, that money that's corporate donations could go to,
Have an RVs themed playground, would be great.
yeah, oh yeah,
You
This one looks like a big cup of cheddar, jump on in.
that's right, whatever it is.
I think there's just a lot of additional costs, just to have it painted can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000. And that's just the initial, so then who's gonna be responsible for maintaining the paint job? And who's gonna be responsible for maintaining the equipment?
Yeah.
How long did we have to extend to make the final decision about the grant? Do you remember what the deadline was?
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
They haven't really given us a deadline, but
Sure.
we're just, it's on hold right now, so if there's other communities that can use it or organizations,
I just space by the pavilion used, cause you see people out there kicking a ball or
And yeah,
throwing
that
a
was a big
football.
concern when this was brought up the first
Yeah.
time.
You know, it's already, and if you take that away, then there's really not anything
Right.
too available unless you go down behind the trees. So,
Yeah.
If it was supposed to be for younger, why does it look like a senior citizen?
It's just, it's,
Well,
I think it's just,
It's kind of all of the above.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's for
you have to be
14
over
and over.
14 to
Yeah.
do that.
Maybe they've got all these really excited people.
I think maybe that's maybe at a different time for where this is.
Yeah, but that's like
Other
a
stuff
lie,
might have been a
so-
better
Yeah,
deal
we
for
didn't
Kechi,
need-
but with all the other work that he's done.
You pose for it.
We got better weather.
Do you feel comfortable making a determination now, or is this something that you want to do any kind of further research on, or have any other further discussion, or look at the evaluations or anything like that prior to us saying our recommendations, we're just not gonna keep looking at this part in particular?
if you're asking for my opinion, we're not looking at it anymore.
I don't need to look at it. I would agree with that as well.
Does that need to be a motion to just not?
No, I can just,
Okay.
take the input.
So I feel like our consensus is there anyone else who feels like we should? I just wanna make sure everybody feels heard within that. Is there anyone who says, you know, I think we really should do a little bit more research on this, or, take a second look, or anything like that? Okay. Seems like we're pretty unanimous on that decision, so
Okay,
we can
sounds good.
scooch on from that one.
Yep.
I appreciate you, being candid and giving the information, that's very helpful. The next part is the berm, so you can kind of see that one as well. There's an email there, talking about the berm itself, so, hopefully you read through it. But just talking about kind of the disarray that the berm is in right now, if you haven't been down there, you know, rocks are falling apart and things like that. The piece that's on there, the graph piece that you can kind of see, that is that was a quote, right, from,
Yeah, and again, just provided for informational purposes only, just to kind of give us an idea of what it would take to maybe rehab that area. Now, there's a myriad of different things that we could do. We could repair it. The main thing right now, so let me give you just a little bit of history, and I think Jack touched on this a little bit, but on the north end of the park, there's an elevated berm, and originally, it was told to me that it was planted with a lot of different landscaping. Flowers,
Yes.
pretty plants,
It
different things
was,
like
it was an
that.
astroturf.
And then, right,
Yeah, that
and
was a
then
couple years ago.
the city started getting complaints that there were a lot of bees around there. And maybe some snakes, I also heard snakes were around there. So the city came in and tore all of the landscaping out and put astroturf down there and rock, like stacked limestone. And over the years, like everything else, it's starting to deteriorate. The rocks are starting to break apart, fall down, kids pull them off, kick them off, throw them in the pond, throw them on the sidewalk. Kids jump off of it, and all sorts of different things. So, I guess my point is, we need to figure out what needs to be done with it. We could rehab it, we could do something else with that spot, we could bulldoze the whole thing and just make it more green space. I mean, the options are open. It really,
Do you think it would help if we just made it one story instead of the,
actual berm.
yeah, you know?
I like the elevation kind of because it's kind of fun. My boys
I say my
love
kids
it.
love to play on it.
Yeah, we love
when I
it.
drive by there, you know, during the
looks
day,
nice.
especially in the summer, I see people sitting up there, laying up there
There's
reading.
shade with those trees,
Yeah,
which makes
They use it kind of as a
nice.
reading area, so.
So then if we keep it kind of the way it is, what are our options?
Well, we need to figure out what we wanna do specifically with the brick part, cause that's the part that is falling apart and, you know, could be dangerous if a kid jumps off, and we can't keep people from jumping off of it unless we put a railing or something around it, but
They'll just all-
truth be told, they'll just climb over the railing and jump off the railing, so. But we need to do something to clean that up, so that's why I brought it to you, just to make you aware of it, give you some history on it, and see what direction you want it to go. Just like the playground equipment, we can reach out and we can, you know, get some ideas from other landscaping companies of what they think it may cost to redo that. I guess from the city's perspective, some guidance from the board would be, what do we wanna do with it? Would we prefer to get estimates on rehabbing it, rebuilding the face of that, getting that rock off there, maybe turning it into concrete? Do we wanna lower it? Do we want to, what do we wanna do with it? You know, when I'm asking somebody to give us an estimate, what do I tell them?
Well, what is its purpose?
Well, its original purpose was landscaping, I think, to beautify the north end of the park.
But what do we want it to do?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that
What do we
would be
want
our
the
decision.
purpose of it to be?
Right, that's the
Right.
question.
That's
Do we
my
want it to be
question, yeah.
landscaping or
Yeah, what do you
recreational?
wanna do with it?
It is a nice sitting area, cause like I said, it's one of the only places that has shade,
Mhm.
the full enough trees to be able to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the main thing that we use it for, so it'd be kinda sad to have it completely landscaped to where you couldn't sit there at all. But also I love landscaping, so I don't know.
It is one of the only spots that you can sit on that's not, a
Park bench.
yes.
Yeah.
True.
And I do see a lot of families, there are even pictures, taking pictures of their family up there, so it is well used.
Yeah. Does it make sense to task everyone with spending some time going to look at it and thinking about what you would like it to be? And then let's visit it again in the next, so that we can be very intentional with the requests that we're making as far as, quotes and things like that would be. I would encourage you to do the same thing, of like take pictures, make notes for yourself, look at other parks, other places that you go, other things that you see, and really think about that. In my brain, I even just thought that there's some really fun spots that they've made in a couple of parks that are natural green spaces that are meant for kids to be able to like rock off and roll on and do things like that, so they're just built up during smaller spots and lower and made, different levels and cool things like that doesn't require a lot of landscaping. So there's lots of options, I think, if we're intentional about our time, and we're doing our own information gathering within that, because I will tell you, off the top of my head right now, I can't even picture it in my head, and I've seen it a million times. So can we, we wanna, let's all take some time to go look at it, kind of see and experience what people are using it for, even if you sit and just kind of watch, and then come back with your recommendations for the next agenda, our next meeting.
That's not the Prairie Creek neighborhood sign.
Don't jinx us. You get into the budget report.
No, but that was the
Okay.
entrance to Prairie Creek.
Are we okay to move on from the current discussion? Anybody want to handle it? Alright, so that moves us on to budget report. I know we're getting into the 7 o'clock hour and I want to respect your time, so I'm gonna try to make sure that we're being as on it as possible. So you should see the park budget report, which is one that looks like this.
Yep, and there's a separate sheet,
There's a
which
separate
was an
sheet that
attachment
has-
to your packet with current
Over here.
figures on there, and I'll go through those real quick. So currently, the park fund balance is $267,000 and some change. That is money that's been set aside by the city over time for park improvements, and it's kind of accrued over the years. Last year, when we were figuring this year's budget, the city council decided to designate 2 mills, which a mill is worth about $33,000. That's property tax money to go towards park maintenance, improvements, beautification of the park. So that is roughly $67,000 and some change each year. That is not guaranteed that the city council will continue to do that, depending on budget constraints as we start going into this next budget season, but for now, we have that money that was put into the budget this year. So with that money, the additional accrued funds, that's what gets us to that $267,668.
So that 267 includes the money for 2025.
Correct, yes. Yeah, that is the current balance of that fund.
And that's money in hand,
Yeah, so
right? So that's
right,
not something
that's
we
kinda
have to
cash, yeah.
raise.
It's kind of cash that we have to work with. So when you think about doing improvements to the park, that is kind of the money that we have on hand. Now, big projects like playground equipment, for instance, okay? We would use this, the city has other working capital that we could budget for to maybe supplement or augment any additional cost if the board would recommend to the city that they want to, say, spend $300,000 for playground equipment or upgrades to the park. The city does have funds, however, that would have to go in front of the city council and be part of our budget process to allocate for that money, so.
And then I did ask Matt too, so that would be a standing piece in the budget annually, that there are specific funds that are gonna be earmarked for the park, right? That there are currently, and then making sure that's where we're at.
Right,
And
correct,
that
yeah,
is one though to take into consideration that can often be when it's on a chopping block when we have other situations and other things that happen. So we can't bank on it that every single year we're gonna get that.
The 67,000.
Yeah, right.
yeah,
right,
correct.
right.
So that money came from the city over the past 5, 6, 7 years, needed to do some major improvements to city streets and roadways. So 6 mills, which a mill is roughly $33,000 each, was designated to streets. So the city has been using that to upgrade and repair the city streets. We are now in a maintenance phase, so we don't need all that money, and that's why it was recommended that we take 2 mills from the street fund and put it towards parks, because we know that the park is a big thing for the city and people wanna see some things done up there. So to start building those fund balances. Now, there is an additional piece of revenue that the city gets for the park, and it comes from state alcoholic liquor taxes, okay? So the tax that is collected from within the city when somebody purchases alcohol at the convenience store, the tap house, or Elderslie Farms, 46 2/3% of that is collected and goes back to the city, okay? Of that amount that is given to the city, state law says we have to put half of that in our general fund, which goes for just overall operations of the city. It's used to operate the police department or fund street repairs or whatever it may be. And the other half of that has to go towards parks or parks and recreation into a special fund. So it's not a consistent revenue stream for us. It's not a large revenue stream, but for instance, last year, we estimated in our budget that we would collect approximately $7,000 in liquor tax sales. So that's about $3,500 that goes towards parks, being half of that. This year, so far, we've collected $3,700 in those taxes, which is about $1,850 that goes towards parks. So it's a small revenue stream, something a lot of people don't know about, that a portion of that liquor tax comes back to the city and then has to be used by state statute for parks. So it is a small revenue stream that we
So
have.
you, I'm sorry, but did you say part of it goes to parks and part of it goes to where?
General fund,
Okay.
the city's general fund.
And that is for the first quarter of this year?
Yeah, year to date, which will be the first quarter,
Year
is
to date.
$3,700, yeah, is what we've collected. Other than that, excuse me, we don't have a lot of revenue sources for park improvements. That's why we just don't have much. I kind of forgot my train of thought there, but that's why a majority of park things are supported through the general fund and through the mill levy being put over there.
And something that I did ask Matt was about the possibility of obtaining grants and things like that to assist with that, because there are some companies that build playground equipment that do supply grants if you purchase through them, that they'll go out and get the grants for you, things like that. We have a company that does our grant research for us. Is it OEMP?
We do. Our contracted engineering company, PEC, they have a division that does grant research for us. There are state parks and recreation grants available right now for projects. So if we decided to do a major project, and I always throw this out, playground equipment at the park, because that's the resounding thing, but what we hear is we need to fix the playground equipment. If we were to decide to do that, we could apply for some of that grant funding to hopefully offset some of that cost of that as well.
And we could wait to find out if we actually get the grants before we sign on the dotted line to purchase, right?
On most of them. Some of those grants, you have to have project-ready things in order to apply for them. So it really depends on the grant, yeah. But most of them are project-ready. So we would have to have a project that we have the funds on hand for and are able to spend money to apply for the grant, and then we would be reimbursed for those. Or some of them are in-kind grants. They will say we will pay $100,000 if the city pays $100,000, that sort of thing. So we have to, usually you have to have those funds available to apply for the grant.
And so considering that we have, $267,000 right now, and then some of the, just even looking at some of the, things that we had already gotten, I mean, you're looking at 300 plus fairly easily, I mean, kind of at a minimum stance for that. So that's something we'll have to take into consideration of moving forward, looking at what were we doing, and how were we doing it, and it is going to go in phases, if it's all at once, if it's all that. So those are things that why I wanted to talk about specifically these pieces, because I want us all, I like knowing as much information as possible. But so we understand that there is that line item that's going to be in there, but also us being very intentional about our decision making will allow us to have a better stance. So when those cuts are getting proposed, if we're making good decisions and we are supporting what our community wants, things like that, it does allow us to have kind of a stronger stance when we're asking to keep that money going towards this, which means we have to just be active, and we have to be, doing our job while we're on this board. Because I know just from me even being here, like it's hard for me sometimes to be like, oh, I need to be out here doing these things, right? But I want us to stay really present in that, so that if something does come up, we're having to make a hard decision, they're like, hey, this is something that's a huge draw for us. We are the city of trees. We are these things. This is a huge thing. We want to keep bringing in younger families. We do all these things that's going to support the city. Here's how we do that best, and we have that information. We're supplying that, so we kind of have a leg to stand on when it comes to those moments to kind of back us up as well. So, any consideration of knowing like that some of this stuff is just not going to happen really fast. And that's a really hard part too, because we want it done, and the city wants it done, and our community members want it done really quickly. And the realities are that there's just not a way for us to snap our fingers and in 2 months start a new project, and we're going to have a park next year, brand new park next year. It's just going to be one of those things where we have to be very visible to everyone that we are actively working on it, and here's where we're at. With that.
Now, do you have a way to contact places to ask if, they can donate, funds? Cause like the park down, by Interest Bank, it's got Evergy's name on it because they helped pay for it. So.
Yeah, I've never been involved in that. I think, Neva, you're more involved in that type of fundraising type thing. But we've never had, to my knowledge, a big corporate donor who's came in and said, we want to do this here.
Put their name on it.
Right.
That's why we want Integra to go in.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing too, is that, when we want to do that, we want to be intentional about that too, of who we're going to partner with, because in the same thing of, we want to be intentional about what kind of materials we're using. We want to make sure that the partners we're going with are the ones that are here to support us in our community and what we're doing too at the same time. And so, I might recommend that we have even, and I don't know whether are we allowed to make a subcommittee? Is that, okay,
sure.
It might be a group of people, and I will tell you, for me, I do a lot of fundraising in my day-to-day life, so my preference would be not to be somebody who does that. It's just not, I don't mind doing it, but I don't want to muddy the waters with people that I do communicate and ask about donations for something else to do that. But I might recommend that if that is something that a few of you feel strongly about, that maybe we form a subcommittee that is your committee's mission, right, is to go in and identify those donors, and then have a plan about how we're going to reach out to them. That's something I might say too. It might also be further down the road. We have an idea of what we're going to do, right? So it's good of us to think about that now, so we can be planning for that. But to have an idea, because something in my experience as someone who's done a lot of development is that if you can go in and say, this is exactly what I'm doing with your money, here's the outcomes that we're going to get from that, here's what your name's going to do, then they're a lot easier to get to write a check than I'm thinking about, maybe I might do this.
Yeah.
As well. So I love the idea of that, because I think that if we have other community people that are involved, it allows our community to feel more invested at the same time.
Well, and at this speed with the money that we have available, the playground equipment is not going to be replaced for probably another 5 years.
I don't know, and it's one of those things that, again, like we're talking about how the costs are going to increase, things like that. So that would be another thing to think about. Are we looking at being like, okay, we're going to replace everything all at once? Are we going to go in, because some of it might even be like repairs and stuff. But I know we want something new, because it's not, it's just not conducive to the type of people that are using that space. So that might be something else for us to think about, is at what rate are we hoping to get this done? And what's the reality of how we're able to get it done at what rate at the same time.
So with the pictures that we've seen of I think probably everybody's seen those pictures of the state of the equipment that is currently out there right now. has Thomas, has he seen some of that, those pictures of the rotted
Just
of
the
the
boards.
post? And, yeah, what does he think about that?
It just, the pictures don't paint a good illustration of what's actually happening there.
Okay, so is it,
Yeah,
is it okay?
those are 6x6 posts, it's
Yes.
just the outside of them that's rotted, there's still
Yes.
a good core to those posts.
Okay,
Yeah, the city would never keep equipment like that
So
open
they're
if we
not
thought
a
there was a,
safety concern
no,
at this
if we thought there was a safety concern, no. Public Works has inspected it and
okay,
there's no structural issues with that equipment. So,
okay,
yeah,
very good.
yes. Facebook is not always the best source of information.
I know, you look at it, it's like, well, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The wind's gonna blow and there it goes.
Yeah, it's like, wow, yeah, okay, alrighty. So that's good.
Does everybody understand the budget as it stands right now? What we
Yes.
have, how we're obtaining it? Do you have any
Yes.
questions about that? Okay, and we can continue kind of talking about the rest of those pieces, I think.
Yeah, Nita, I think you touched on it, which was a very good point, is having projects ready to go. And a lot of times what those are called are shovel-ready projects, okay? All we need to do is start digging, and we have everything else ready. So when you take something to the city council, having everything put together, having, this is all, we just need assistance with the funding for this, and then we're ready to put it in the ground, okay? That's really what we need. When you go to donors, if you were asking somebody for that type of thing, you would want a shovel-ready concept. Hey, this is what we need money for, we know exactly what it's gonna cost, we know exactly where it's gonna go, we know exactly what our timeline is once we receive funding of when we're gonna tear the old stuff, and I keep going back to playground equipment, cause it's a simple analogy, We know when we're gonna tear the equipment out of the ground, when we're gonna put the new stuff in, when it will be done, so that helps a lot, yeah. And I guess I would kinda not piggyback, but Debbie, you had said it would be 5 years before this is done. I don't see it being that long,
Do
We
you think
could,
because of more revenue that's coming in,
Well,
or?
yeah, even though we have a limited amount of funds here, if it's a priority of the city, we as the city can maybe find the funds for that. It all has to do with budgeting and what our city council wants to do and those discussions with them. But it's like any project, if a community really wants it done, we're gonna find the funds for it, whether it's in our current budget or through grants or whatever it may be. So I would be careful of putting a timeline on things, a lot of times when that gets out there, people are like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be 5 years until we get anything done, when,
Well,
in
at
reality,
the
it
current
may
rate
be.
of our funds, that would be a true statement, if we don't get additional assistance from the city.
Sure, you don't have enough money to afford what those estimates were for. Now, if we go with something lesser, something not as grandiose as was presented in those plans, it's gonna cost us less and maybe we could afford it. Or if you don't have quite enough, maybe through the budget process, we can identify funds to help support those additional costs, because it is important to the city to, keep that park looking good. It's a centerpiece of this city, and that's why a lot of people come to Kechi is for the park, and it's heavily, heavily used, so.
And again, why we just have to be very specific about the plan that we submit to them, and we just wanna be really just able to answer the questions, have a really good idea what we're doing, why we're doing it. We've done all the research on it, financially, here's where it's at, and here's why, and I think if we can do that, like he's saying, we're just gonna have to go back to them and really, impress upon them the necessity.
And like with
Yeah,
Yep.
any large project, sometimes you have to do it in pieces. So
Right.
depend on, decide what's most important, A, B, or C. We can do it in pieces or phases. And a lot of times, if it's presented that way, as long as people have a vision of what it's going to be at the end, they're a lot more receptive to it and understanding when you're trying to.
Do you think it's more expensive if the company is coming back and forth, like to do phase 1, phase 2?
There's usually, a
Additional
fee,
We have to use
yeah,
the same company for everything. It's another
True.
thing.
right.
so there's gonna be lots of stuff for us to consider as we get, closer to
Closer to-
that portion of it, I think, for sure.
And those are discussions you have with your vendors. A lot of times the vendors are the ones who can put together those phases of development for you. If you're gonna use them, they will say, okay, we understand you only have X amount of dollars right now. Let's do this first, let's do this second, let's do this third, and they build the program for you and help you budget for that.
cause they want us to do it too.
Right.
Yeah.
As well, okay. Are we good with the budget information? All right, let's move on to communication. So that is, did you get more information about, the drive or us being able to put stuff online?
A little bit, we're working on it. So, our in-house IT guy, who is also our planning and zoning administrator, I discussed it with him, he's gonna look in and see if we can get like a Google Docs or something to dump things into. There's nothing that we can do within our city's IT infrastructure, okay? Because there's financial information that goes back and forth to the state, it is locked down like nobody's business. So we can't allow other people to remote into that system, other than people who are, city employees or city authorized equipment. So we will have to find some type of cloud-based platform or something like that. I think one of the issues with sending out this first agenda was there were so many attachments to it that a lot of people's emails were kicking it back because it was just too much. So maybe having some type of repository like a Google Docs where everybody could, log in and get that information out of that folder would be more beneficial. So we're working on it, yeah, and we'll figure something out.
I just asked Matt about that because I'm very bad with paper. Or if I'm out talking to somebody about it and I want to be able to kind of show them, hey, this is what I'm looking at. It's just easier than having constantly carry this folder with me as well. So I think that was all we had for communication. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, but for the time being, it will just be email. Yeah, if you have any questions for me, shoot me an email. If I have anything to put out to the board, I'll put it out to the board via email. So. And if the attachment's too big, I'll just create a link on the website and you can go there.
Perfect. Okay, and then that goes on to the park bylaws, which you can see is the Kechi Park and Tree Board bylaws. Is that right?
Yep. So it was once called the Park and Tree Board. I think people refer to it as just the Kechi Park Board now. There's several different iterations of this within our city files, and this was the most recent one that I could find, but it is, for tonight, is just provided for informational purposes. Please look this over. At the next meeting, I would like to go through these bylaws, update anything that needs updated, make any changes that we need, and just kind of revise those to have an updated current version of the bylaws.
Okay.
So go through them, make your notes. We can discuss it at the next meeting. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I can talk you through current ordinances and answer any questions that you have, or find an answer for you if I don't have it.
Any questions about the bylaws, what we're gonna do with that? Perfect, okay. Staff reports. Do we have any staff reports?
I don't have any.
Perfect.
I just have one, I
Yes,
will
ma'am.
miss the next meeting. So,
We'll need a secretary, temporary
we'll need a
notator.
secretary for next meeting.
Who's that really good? We'll ask at the next meeting, be prepared to volunteer or something, because I don't know if you can see this, but it's bad. Perfect, thank you, Karen. Was there anything else from you, Ms. Karen? No, ma'am. Oh, it's on me. All right, so that would just make us adjournment. Anything else anyone needed to discuss for tonight?
I have one more thing that I just thought of. So as we go through these meetings and develop the agenda, you can either reach out to myself, but Neva and I work directly on the agenda. She is actually responsible for drafting the agenda, so any items that you may want on the agenda need to go to her, for her to consider putting on the agenda for the next meeting, yeah.
And you all should have my email address. I believe, yes.
Yeah, did everybody get an updated contact list from me of everybody's emails?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll send one out, so everybody has everybody's email addresses.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk to each other.
Well,
More
you're
than
not,
two
but,
person? More than three.
More than
three.
Yeah.
More than
Oh,
three,
right.
okay.
right,
Can't
but if
have
you
more.
need to send anything to Neva for, the agenda or anything like that, yeah.
So,
Yeah, just don't create email threads.
right,
A back and forth discussion about what happened is a
Right.
different thing than you sending me saying, I'd like to add this to the agenda.
Right.
That one would be okay.
It is.
I will not reply to you. I'm just kidding. I will say thank you. I
Just
got
don't
this.
create a thread.
Don't reply all.
Yeah, don't reply all, that's what we say with city council, no
Yes,
reply
yeah,
all.
nobody
I
needs to
did-
reply all
I did
ever.
once, and I
That
only
needs
wrote
to go
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I got,
Okay.
I
All right.
got disciplined for it.
So that, if no one else has anything else before we go, that'll just leave us to adjournment. Do we need a motion to adjourn? Okay. Does anybody have a motion for us to adjourn tonight? One motion, do we have a second? Perfect, thanks everybody, I appreciate your time.